Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we're looking at Star Trek memes. So here we start off. Um, Beam us up, Mr. Scott. There are no signs of intelligent life here. Unfortunately, so often it does feel that way at times. Uh, Works hard for several years, or for 7 years, on a ship stranded in the Delta Quadrant. As a model Starfleet officer, builds astrometrics lab, has been captured and tortured on multiple occasions, multiple shuttlecraft accidents, has his genetics manipulated by aliens, died, and has been irradiated, has been shot, has been back in time in other dimensions, sucked into space and killed, had possibly less sex than Geordi, and still remains an ensign. Yes, Ensign Kim had always kind of gotten the crux of the whole deal. Everyone else seemed to have gotten promoted, so sad to see. All right, on the next episode of Keeping Up with the Cardassians. And that's the way I've always kind of taken it because the names are so similar. Dig through graves up there. I'll explain it to you later. In the original series, all the security officers and general crewmen wore red shirts, and they flipped that around in the next generation, where all the general crewmen wore the yellow shirts, and then the command officers wore the red. That's why they changed that up. There was a documentary which explained that some time ago. Once I've gotten the Infinity Gauntlet and collected the 6 Infinity Stones, I'll finally be able to shape reality with just one snap of my fingers. Lower life forms are so amusing. And the things that Gene Roddenberry had created with the Q, essentially creating God himself in so many ways. And the fear at the time is Gene Roddenberry himself was more of an atheist. Not saying he didn't have a view of God at all, it's just that he himself, for the most part, was atheist. And that did worry some of the other writers. Please keep saying about time a woman or a major sci fi franchise made a lead woman. Only 22 years after Star Trek did it first. Not just Star Trek, but James Cameron with Aliens, um, as well as really George Lucas. I mean, Leia. He had admitted Leia was the one that really was keeping the whole rebellion going, with Luke and Han kind of, they were main characters in their own right, and so many people felt that they were the main characters, but they were the main workers for the things that needed to be done. She was the one controlling the Rebel Alliance, which is always the big thing I've always taken. And, we've always had Sarah Connor as a main character in that. Yeah, in the first one, she was the main victim, but she really became the main character. So, there's been so many other franchises that have done all this stuff in the past. And it's not that we don't like the franchises, we just want good writing. And then a lot of them had really good writing. So, dangerous mission, better send down 4 chief officers and a second in command. This is so very true. But on the other hand, when you really look at it, and it is funny to think about it, um, so you have Commander Riker, and then I I think Dr. Crusher was a commander, but everyone, you had a lieutenant commander for Data. Geordi started off as a lieutenant, and same thing with Worf. He was just a lieutenant. I don't think he really made commander until either the seventh. Well, actually, it would have been the sixth season, because the seventh season he was not on or on the Next Generation. He was on Deep Space Nine, so maybe he got his promotion at that point. But he stayed a lieutenant for most of those seasons. All right, when someone doesn't like Star Trek, there's always that big debate of who do you like better, Star Trek or Star Wars. And I've said it before, Star Trek was always one of those things that we could watch on a weekly basis, even if it was on reruns. But Star Wars was something we had to go to the movies to see. Um, and I do agree with J.J. Abrams when he had made the comment where, Star Wars is more of rock and roll, Star Trek is more of a symphony. One is a little bit more science based than the other. Not saying you can't, you know, change things up from time to time, uh, but that's really the big change of it. You're looking at a big ship with a bigger crew compared to just a small handful of people. That is the biggest part. When you're looking at the character development on a big ship interacting with all these people compared to it's just a couple people traveling around doing whatever they're doing. So, how tough are Scotsmen? Laddie, you're speaking to the only guy in a red shirt who isn't dead, and he never did. James Doohan had played a very good character, and it was interesting to see him doing one of the daytime soap operas, and he didn't use his accent. Of course, he's Canadian, and maybe some of you know, maybe some of you don't know, he's actually missing a finger on his right hand. That's why you never really see his right hand. He lost it in World War II, storming the beaches of Normandy. Inappropriate touching, Jim. We had training on this. You know, it's interesting because if you ever get some of the original series in the very first, like the pilot episode and all that, uh, um, Spock was a completely different character in that. He was more emotional and all that. But on the other hand, the gentleman that was playing Pike at the time, because it wasn't, they didn't actually have him listed as Kirk. I think it was Pike. He was very withdrawn and more of a serious or so character. He didn't really accentuate his feelings and all that. But then when they got William Shatner in there and he was a little bit more outgoing in his dynamics, Leonard Nimoy had felt that he needed to pull back. And we got that kind of stone faced Vulcan stereotype, which worked out really well. Don't worry, men, you'll be fine. And then I said that they'd be fine. You know, again, it's the red shirts. You know, so many of them had died, and I've had this conversation with some of my friends in the past of, would you really want to be stationed on the Enterprise? Think about every episode you're losing a couple people. Uh, Space is now, and I think always will be, a very dangerous place to go. And in my lifetime, I remember the Challenger blowing up, and then they were talking about all the kids are going to need to have therapy and all that. And my father, who, to his credit, he would watch the shuttles go up on TV with me, and he looked at me and he, hey, do you need it? It's like, I'm not going to need therapy because it's, we're pushing the envelope. Even in Star Trek, the things that they're doing, you're pushing an envelope. Yes, it's more common practice to be able to go from star system to star system. But when you go out beyond our atmosphere and something goes bad, it's not like you have something to fall back on. And they bring up the whole fact that there are escape pods and there are other backup life supports and so on and so forth. But quite often, whenever you come across another ship that has really malfunctioned, the crew doesn't survive. So it's always pushing an envelope. Open a channel to the Ferengi vessel. Oh, you're using ad block. We support our operations with advertising revenue. Disable your ad blocking protocols in order to communicate with this vessel, the Grand Nagus. Oh, for crying out loud! You know, I could very easily see them doing this, and I know I've seen some other kind of Star Trek jokes, and I use some of them today, just in offhand, just being silliness. Um, it does seem like it would be fitting, though, from the Grand Nagus. Meanwhile, at CBS, this is an older one, but watch the new Star Trek series in 2017, available exclusively on CBS All Access. And with all the streaming services that have come up throughout the years, this very much is the way things have kind of gone. It really makes one wonder, do you really even need cable or satellite anymore, except for the fact of you want the satellite or the streaming services? What's the point of having cable in that? I think they need to get back down to where cable was. Actually, I'm old enough to sit here and say you paid for cable for premium television, so you didn't have ads. And now we're paying for ad TV. So it's kind of sad in that regard. All right, Star Trek Jellicoe. I've written a new book. It's called How to Survive Falling Down a Staircase. It's a step by step guide. Jellicoe had gotten kind of a bad rap for a captain. I've heard some people say that actually he did, he had a different way of doing things than Picard. But as a captain, he was a very decent captain. It's just that you're in command, it's your ship, and you need to get everyone in line with your command in that. Um, and of course, because he's replacing someone that we really liked, um, of course, he wasn't taken very well. But all in all, yeah, people are going to like him or hate him, but either way. Have you ever heard something so stupid it gives you a Dr. McCoy face? I think we all have. Unfortunately, I think we've all been there so many times. Seatbelts and airbags apparently lost technologies. It's amazing because way back then, they would shake the camera and they would tell people, they're going to hit something or whatever, and they would fly themselves across the stage to do this. So, it becomes very organic in that regards of, you just shake the camera and everybody just kind of flies back and forth. You know, the basic technologies that work very well today because, you know, as CGI gets better and better, sometimes the older CGI looks more kind of fakeish than the newer stuff. And, doing things in a very organic way works so much better in those ways. Uh, Deanna is upset. How much Viagra have you been using? Well, she's been taking it pretty hard. This is a kind of spicy one, and that some of the jokes do go back and forth. Um, it is funny though. Captain James T. Kirk, brave enough to scratch his chin with a phaser set to kill. Let's see your precious Jean-Luc Picard do this. You know, uh, and the fact that it was really a remolded glue gun with the Type One phaser into the Type Two and all that. The things that we have actors do, whenever we see that it's bad acting on stuff, some of the things I've really kind of learned over the years is an actor sometimes will do things over and over and over, and sometimes they're doing it probably how we want them to do it, but the director's the one that's saying it's not the way it needs to be done. It's garbage. We have to do it this way because that's his vision. And we look at it and it's like, oh my God, this is some of the worst stuff ever. Really, instead of really blaming the actors, I've really come to learn that it's really more the director you need to put the blame on. All right, Captain Picard, when confronted by Q, quoted Shakespeare at him, couldn't get rid of him, not even on a bet. Captain Sisko, when confronted by Q, smacked him right in the mouth, never had a problem with Q again. And that is very true. The big changes between Kirk, Picard, Cisco, Janeway. Picard and Janeway were more captains that sat there and had others do the work. And really, I guess in some regards, that was more of a what you would actually expect things to be in the real world. They've gotten to that level. You're going to send other people out to do the jobs. Unfortunately, with Kirk and Cisco, they're very hands-on. They want to be in the thick of it, and that makes them very endearing. Picard was a very good captain, but he was a commanding captain, not a hands-on captain, to say it in that regard. Let's see. And then finally, I'm reading a book about anti-gravity Spock. Sounds fascinating, Captain. I can't put it down. So with that, we'll leave it here. Hopefully you get a couple chuckles out of this. Thank you for visiting.